Today we have news from Harley-Davidson around the Pan America, specifically this new model of the Pan America that they're calling the ST. This has turned the Pan Am into a little bit more of a sport tour than the adventure bike that it's been in the past. And I think this is a really smart move, and we'll talk about why in a moment. But first, let's run through some of the basic specs on this new version of the Pan America. So we're still going to be using the Revolution Max 1250 V-twin that we've been seeing in this bike since it launched. 149 horsepower, 91 pound-feet of torque. We also have some pictures of it here that we can scroll through. You can see a few of the different color options. They're in gray, they're in black, and they also have a version of it in red. The styling is a little bit different because they've got this 1250 ST graphic that goes along the side of the bike. There you can see it in red. Definitely similar looks to what we've seen in the past, but you'll notice the biggest difference with this new version of the bike is the fact that it is running a street tire and a different wheel setup. So initially, the Pan Am launched as more of an adventure bike with a slightly knobby tire, a 19-inch front wheel, and a little bit more suspension travel, but this new version of the bike flips that around. So we have 17-inch cast aluminum wheels in the front and in the rear, so the same size all around, which should help it as far as cornering. We've also got some Michelin Scorcher Sport tires on this. That's going to be one of the biggest differences in the characteristics of the bike, and to match up with that whole system, they've also reduced a little bit of the travel in the suspension. So this is not going to have as much suspension travel as the typical off-road version of the Pan America. However, you still are going to have a lot of the electronic and also manual adjustments here in the suspension that the previous Pan Americas have had. So electronically, through the screen, you can adjust the preload, which is especially nice on a long-distance bike if you're going to be bringing a lot of gear with you, even adding another passenger into the mix. Then you can go into that screen and adjust your preload depending on how much stuff you're bringing along with you. You can also manually adjust your compression and rebound damping. There's a lot of adjustability in the suspension, which is going to be really nice, and a lot of technology on this bike in general. Already being able to adjust your preload electronically is a pretty nice feature to have, but we've got, of course, a 6.8 TFT on this motorcycle. It's a really high definition. It's a good looking screen. And we can flip through some more of the pictures to see a little bit more of what the bike looks like. And it's, I think, a little bit of an adjustment seeing this bike in street form rather than having the knobby tires that I think we're used to seeing it on. But I want to talk a little bit about why I think this makes sense. Because this Pan America, launching as an adventure bike, it's a cool motorcycle, has some really cool technology. If you do get one of the off-road versions of the bike and you want to take it on some fire roads, on some loose surfaces, their off-road ABS is a really impressive system. I got to test that out on one event with Harley-Davidson, and they had us do an exercise where we rode down a dirt road, and they said, go ahead and grab a handful of just the front brake. Anyone who's ridden on a loose surface knows that's not typically something that you want to do over dirt. The off-road ABS on this bike is a really impressive program, and you can actually do that over dirt, which does give you a lot of extra confidence when you're trying to slow down this admittedly very heavy motorcycle when you don't have that much traction. So that takes a little bit of the stress out of the element of riding this on dirt. That being said, the regular off-road version of the Pan America is a heavy motorcycle. It's around 570 pounds. This new street version of the bike is a little bit lighter, so it's around 540 pounds, which is nice. Any weight that they can pull out of that bike is going to help in performance, not only acceleration, but also cornering, as we all know. But this is a bike of a size and weight that kind of precludes it from really doing anything too crazy as far as single track and off-road riding. I don't see a lot of people out there riding these on really intense trails or taking that to motocross courses. Not saying that's impossible. I bet some of you out there are crazy enough to do it, but it's not something that I would strictly recommend, and I don't really think it's what this bike is best at. I've always thought, though, that this Pan America made for a really good long distance cruiser, and a lot of Harley-Davidsons do, but this one is more upright. You get some more lean angle out of this bike than a lot of other Harley models, about 37 degrees max lean angle in either direction on this bike. It also, being the street version of the bike, it does have a slightly lower seat height by about 1 inch. So it's a really good overall package, and I think that turning this, as we can see in the picture here, into a little bit more of a street bike makes sense for it, because the way that it's set up with its wind protection, with its upright riding position so that you have a good view out in front of you over the tops of some smaller cars and out into intersections, and the comfortability and adjustability of the suspension, the technology that you get with that 6.8-inch TFT. These are all things that make for a really good sport tourer bike, one that you can take into canyons, still do some pretty aggressive riding on, especially with 149 horsepower. Don't count this bike out as far as acceleration goes, especially if you haven't ridden one. I highly recommend throwing a leg over any version of the Pan America, throwing it in sport mode and twisting the grip, so long as you're ready for it, because it's a quick accelerating bike. Putting this on street tires, I think, just makes this better at what it was always going to be the best at, which is blasting down the highway, blasting through some canyons, covering a lot of distance. Again, really good wind protection, really good technology. So it's a good all-around motorcycle for what I think most people are really using these Pan Americas for. Now, there's still off-road models out there. You can still pick up a version of this bike with knobby tires and with crash bars if you do want to take it on some fire roads and do a little bit of light off-roading. And I think that you can spec these bikes out, even from the factory, in such a way as to really split the balance between how much street riding do you expect to do and how much off-road riding do you expect to do. If you're actually going to do a fair bit of riding on dirt, you can spec these out pretty aggressively. But I think for a lot of the people that are looking at this as potentially a highway bike, this new ST package on the Pan America makes a lot of sense. They are making this, in red, gray, and black. I wouldn't mind seeing, personally, a few other color options. We'll flip through some of the photos here. You can see a few pictures of the red and of the black alongside each other. In the past, they've done some pretty cool color schemes on the Pan America, some that I personally prefer over this particular package. What I would be interested to know is if it'll be possible and relatively easy to at least get this wheel tire package fitted to another Pan America, even if the suspension isn't exactly the same, because I'd kind of like to pick the best of both worlds of some of my favorite things I've seen in different models of the Pan America over time. So we'll see down the line what they end up offering as far as accessories on these and what they end up offering as far as special editions in different colors. But again, very excited to see a more street version of the Pan America. This is always how I've viewed this bike, is a little bit more of a long distance bike with a light knack for doing a little bit of off-road riding. And I also want to take a quick moment to talk about our channel sponsor, Rider Justice. If you're ever out there riding or even driving your car, whether you're on 2 wheels or 4, and if you need legal representation, be sure to reach out to our friends over at Rider Justice. Scott and the team over there, they do this as more than just a business. They are really passionate about riding, especially. So be sure to call Scott first, and you can check out a link below for their information. But also let me know down in the comments below, what do you think of this new version of the Pan America? Would you rather this than the off-road version of the bike? And that's all for this video. We'll see you in the next.